when you're in the middle of space, when you have half your humanity ripped away, and we're so far into the future we don't know what's the norm. So this would have been a perfect sci-fi setting to explain that. But instead, I'm sorry, Meg, you fucked it.
Death competition. And because it just...
Too many layers.
Too many layers.
It's an onion. It's an onion.
And it's not a nice onion. It's one of those onions that you immediately cut and it makes you cry. And then when you eat it, you're like, why is this onion biting me as I bite it? So death competition. And it's right now. And then you see people like taking off their clothes because everyone's in fucking ball gowns. And the basic rules is that if you have an act with multiple people, one person has to like compete in all of the competitions. You can't have the whole act do it. But if that one person loses in that round, the entire act gets sacked. Rora is a solo artist, and so she has no team members, so she has to do everything herself. She has her friends, Marzana and Akio, and I don't know, there's a couple other people, and Marzana and Akio are in an act together, and Akio decides to do the competition this round. And what it is like a death obstacle course. And Rora immediately makes the assumption that Gwen knew about this death competition, and that's why she didn't want to go, which is a really weird assumption to make.
It is.
Given that very quickly Gwen is convinced to go, and I feel like if I knew there was a death competition and I wanted to avoid it, I would just have been like, no, I'm tired. I just got turned into a fucking cyborg. Leave me alone, Rora.
And if this felt contrived to you listening to it, it's so much worse in the book somehow. It just feels so, like such a contrived, like, oh no, now we need some dissension between the two, some conflict.
Also, why would she care? Why would she feel betrayed? She does not know Gwen. She's gonna try to steal stuff from, or like get her.
You're right, Katie. That's entirely it. If your plan is to seduce her and get her to give you a good heart, you should not fucking care, and you should not actively towards her, and you will see Rora completely forgets her motivation and acts completely differently towards her.
Afterwards, she's very pissed at Gwen, and she pushes her away. But if she's trying to seduce her and get some type of service out of her by lying to her and swindling her, why would you do that?
So, competition, it's a death obstacle course. There's this dude named Adrican,
who has an Irish accent.
Scottish,
and also, to be clear, this is how we know he's bad. He's also the only person in the entire setting to be homophobic.
I know, he says doink a whole bunch.
He's the only one like this in the entire setting.
Abraham doesn't like Rora, but he's gonna try fuck with her. Rora gets through the obstacle course. She makes it through. A lot of people die during the obstacle course, but she ends up coming through, and then they're like, okay, the rest of you get taken to have your contracts ended. And then you switch to Gwen's point of view, where they're like, you now need to remove all the cyborg parts that are our property from these cyborgs. And she's like, oh, absolutely not. I can't do that. Number one, I don't know. I've never operated on a human before. This isn't just like, and what if they need their implant to survive?
We should make sure to quote Meg Latour's favorite quote. You did it very well, Will, before. Do you remember?
Her heart sagged like an old woman's tits.
No, not that. The whole, I'm a ship's tinkerer.
Not
a
God damn it,
cyborg.
Jim. I'm a ship's tinkerer, not a cyborg tinkerer.
She says that every chapter.
She's like, I can't do this. And then Celeste's like, I won't give you a choice. And then like one of the guards like beats her with something, and they're like, if you don't do, I don't need you to have legs. So like, if you don't listen, I will literally.
What was the point of hiring her?
Break your legs. And Bastion will help you. And she's like, I need alcohol. I need like boiling water. It's like birth in like you like you get the towels and the boiling water.
I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, at least she knows that much.
And then she she has to remove all of these cyborg parts, and luckily everyone that she like removes, none of them were people who had parts that were necessary for their overall survival, and everyone survived that night. And it literally, the next morning, she's literally just covered in blood. Her and Bastion sat through this whole thing together. She's super pissed at Bastion because she was like, you knew this, and you did warn me, but you should have warned me more clearly. Why did you hire me? And he was like, well, to be frank, I didn't know about this death competition when I hired you. We really just needed a cyborg tinkerer, and you're the best ship tinkerer, and I thought you'd be a quick study. I wasn't aware. And then she realizes Rora's pissed at her, and there's like an undisclosed amount of time in between each of the competitions, but in book time, like you reading, it feels like very short. Because what happens in this in-between period is she convinces Rora, she realizes Rora's mad at her, she convinces Rora to not be mad at her, the two flirt, then her and Bastion get friendly, and she also fixes Marzana's foot. Marzana has a cyborg foot, and she thinks she's fixed it, and she's talking to Bastion, and she's like, you could have prepared for me this better. And they're arguing about something because her and Bastion don't get along. And then she's like, I need better books. And he's like, actually, I might be able to help with that. And thus, they have to go into Bastion's room, and instead of telling her as they're walking to his room, like, hey, we need to convince the guards that we're going in my room for private time, so I'm going to kiss you. He just kisses her out of nowhere, and she's also like, damn, do I kind of like this? Even though I'm totally into horror right now. And then they go in his room. Once they're in his bedroom, he was like, sorry, I just needed I'm going to show you something that I shouldn't, so I need the guards not to question that we're, in my bedroom, so we need to make it believable. So then instead of just getting on the bed and start going,
Shut my door.
they actually kiss and get heavy.
I know, why not just do...
Bastion. What are we doing? Why are you actually kissing? This makes no sense. And she also is like, I guess we have to do this now. And so they kiss again. And then they shimmy down a window, and down a drain, and then they go.
Wait, you forget the best part. He tented his trousers.
Oh, yeah, Bastion got turned on. I don't care. Continuing, and this is one of my least favorite scenes because this is one of the first times, because you realize I didn't realize when I first started this that she's trying to shoehorn a fairy tale thing into it.
Maria, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Of all fairy tales, which is your favorite?
Beauty and the Beast.
Interesting. So, was this book therefore your favorite because there are random Beauty and the Beast references?
No. Thanks, I hate it.
So Bastion leads her along and shows her that there's this door that he has keys to. He only recently got the keys because now he's
part of upper management.
Yes, and this has been a dream of his for quite some time. And he takes this key, they go down this staircase forever and ever and ever, and then they get to this door, and Meg Latour had the gall.
The absolute audacity.
To have Gwen say, I'm not gonna, what do you expect me to close my eyes or something? I'm not gonna close my eyes. And it's like, you don't have to be that on the nose. Because that's exactly what Belle says, or what the Beast has Belle do. And so anyway, they open the door and
the lights come on.
It's a library. Who knew?
Beautiful.
This makes total sense.
Giant library that she wasn't allowed access to, and it's beautiful. And she's like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I'm like, "Oh,
I've never seen so many books in one place."
It really angered me because not only is this not even an actual fairy tale attempt, it's just copying a scene from a Disney film. It's a weird choice. Anyway, while they're in there, she does find some actual books about cyborg tinkering, and she realizes that in Marzana's foot, she accidentally crossed two wires that shouldn't have been, her foot will malfunction. And she's like, man, I've got to fix this before the next competition. And Bastion's like, ooh, actually, that starts at dawn. And they're like, what time is it? And it's 6 a.m. So, the sun is coming up.
This is when a concept is introduced that Bastion may or may not have an eating disorder. And I felt this was about as comfortably ingratiated into the story as me shoving my fist up someone's ass. As someone who has struggled with these things, the way she handled it was so unnatural. Instead of so Gwen's sitting with Bastion and they're eating while they're in this library before they go off to go rescue and do things, and she thinks to herself, oh, he's not eating very much, he's playing with the food on his plate. And not that maybe he just doesn't have an appetite or that, he just doesn't eat very well. She specifically says, I wonder if he's restricting. And I'm just like, that is not what people think right off the bat. That is a very specific thing to jump to.
She's literally like, I've never seen him eat before. I work with this girl, Danielle. Hi, Danielle. And I have never actually seen Danielle ingest food.
It's because she freaking doesn't when she's working.
But sometimes she does. She'll have the yogurt next to her, but I've never actually caught her eating the thing.
Not caught her.
I saw her eating chocolate. But, not once did it occur to me to go, oh,
Her lips are
yeah.
straight.
There's also
The
the
rest of
fact
her
that
body's
it's
angled.
such a specific jargon of like, oh,
That's what
I know what they write. I know what the
Yeah.
term is.
Why would Gwen,
A ship's tinkerer.
why would she say, oh, I have so much experience with this, with knowing so many people that do this? And it's like, this just doesn't feel comfortable. You can incorporate that. That's fine. We can do representation. That's fine. But this feels so uncomfortable. And it's even highlighted more so because she calls Bastion out on it. And it's
I don't think
so
that's what you're supposed to do
weird.
if someone
Okay,
has
so
an eating
this is a
disorder.
problem with AuthorTube as a whole, and it was also a bit of a problem in the Savior series. They are woke, right? So they have to have diversity. Now, do you incorporate this diversity into the characters and world? No. You have a cast of a lot of people of a lot of different like races and maybe genders, and oh, a man with an eating disorder. See, it's representation. Two problems with this. First of all, this is not a thing that you can just have going on in the world. Marzana is a trans woman. It's mentioned at the beginning, not mentioned again. That is okay, because this is not an openly homophobic world, and so therefore, her just being a trans woman is nice for people.
And it can just happen and exist, and you don't have to call back to it.
That came across very naturally. In fact, Meglator, when she describes that, actually comes across completely normal. It was a perfectly fine description.
Having an eating disorder is not the same thing, because that would impact your character quite a lot. It impacts who you are as a person quite a lot, and it is not really tied into the Bastion as a character. You get
It
some
is
like,
not whatsoever.
oh, I have like some self-hatey stuff a little bit in the back of his, like in his character,
And I used to be.
and it's like, it's not. Yeah, it's so uncomfortable because it's not. She literally was just like, well, men don't have eating disorders, or it's not talked about that men have eating disorders.
Despite the fact
so
that they
I'm
do.
gonna put that in. Right, it's not talked about.
Maybe, like, I'm not saying that Meglator doesn't know anything about eating disorders. Maybe she too has had a history with it. Maybe she has a loved one that does. There's a difference between the experience and portraying the experience. So this portrayal of this experience has nothing to do with the character. It seems, like Will is saying, it seems like we were looking at, like, I don't know, a painting that was perfect, kind of, or something, and we were just like, this needs a dollop of yellow, and there's no yellow, and you're just like, and it doesn't look good at all.
And I said this to Will when I realized what was happening, because Gwen keeps commenting that he looks thinner, and she's never seen him eat, and so I very quickly realized, there's going, and in the description, like, before the book starts, there's a disclaimer, a trigger warning, and it said, like, eating disorders, and I quickly realized it was Bastion. And from a personal standpoint, I would love to see a story that truly grappled with the reality that men have. This is a problem for men just as much as it is for women, but it just was handled,
if not more,
so,
sometimes.
yes, it really, I mean, body dysmorphia and eating disorders are super common in men, and so to see something that genuinely grappled with it and like engaged would have been absolutely wonderful. But this ain't it. Like, if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to find it here. Similarly to where it has a polyamorous relationship with a character who previously states he's a one-person kind of guy. Some people have said that this is problematic, like the polyamorous relationship. I will say that she doesn't describe it problematically, but none of the work is put in to show how this character would go from being not
Thank
okay
you.
with sharing
Thank you,
to
Ellie.
okay with sharing.
It feels like there is one
Compliments
romance in
are
this
always
book,
welcome,
and
guys.
it is relatively well fleshed out, and then there's like, and then there's a hot gymnast. But I kind of want this to be polyamorous because I'm woke. So at the end they get together, and the two storylines are not equal in terms of the time and attention that is given to them,
Yes.
and it feels very
Look at my eraser.
perfectory. And again, that's kind of problematic when you're just shoving it in and it doesn't work.
At the end, when we get to the end and we end up describing the last scene, which you'll all just love so ever so much, it's incredibly apparent what Will's talking about. But yeah, no, a good way that she could have potentially incorporated this particular trait, the eating disorder, is to explain the, like, let's just pretend in a world that he is restricting, right? And he is not eating for the express purpose of whatever it is that he's having problems with. Well, then we would have needed scenes. We would have needed scenes and situations where that psychological block with his ability to address himself, and like there's going to be a lot of self-hatred, but that doesn't really seem part of his character. It seems like, yes, that was his past because he reveals it to her, but just like Maria just said, there's no work put in to infuse the character with the traits that she actually wants them to
It's
have.
informed traits, as Will loves to say, where the author is telling you this thing, but you don't feel it. You feel much more impact of him just hating the actions of his past life than you do for his self-loathing of him being bigger once upon a time.
Here's the thing. Eating disorders are about your body dysmorphia, right?
And about control.
Because I was going to say control, and I would argue using Celeste, his relationship with Celeste,
Yes.
would have been
That makes sense.
a much better way. But continue with what?
Body image and control, right? Okay. What gives you more control and changes your body than cyborg implants? Wouldn't that have been an interesting vector to take this through? That maybe he keeps cutting himself up as an extension of this. Maybe he has like a weird nuclear reactor on his back that's slowly going bad because it provides him energy. There are so many ways that if you're talking about body issues, a cyborg part of that is kind of important.
Or you can go the route, if you want to focus on like the actual eating disorder, to do like he has no control with Celeste, and you find out she abuses him in multiple ways. So the only way for him to control his life and any aspect of his life is to like control what goes in and out of his body, which is where a lot of people, especially from abusive situations, that's how they end up in that situation. And so that could have worked. But again, the nuance, the work it would have taken for any of that is just not put in. Continuing though, because we gotta hustle. My moms want to eat breakfast, and my mom made homemade bread. They're like, "Oh no, Marzana's foot's gonna go bad," and he's like, "The competition's starting," and she's like, "Do you know what it is?" And he's like, "No, I have no idea, but they have to go to this location." And then you switch to Aurora, and it's Gwen is like, "We have to help them. They're our family. I now have this found family.
This family that I've only met one of.
And who I only know the names of like 4.
And now all cyborgs are my family." And it's not just a matter of like, we're all in a shitty situation, I want to help as much as I can. She relies on this family thing, and it feels real forced. Because again, if she was just like, "No, this is a shitty situation, we have to help them," all you have to do is, same thing could have happened. You just change the words you use it with. Mwah. Much better.
Another rotten layer to the onion.
They find out that the second competition is to capture a dragon, and Gwen convinces Bastion, because you find out that dragons used to be in the universe, but now they've all been relegated to this one planet that they also threw the cyborgs on. The dragons sometimes will attack, and Celeste is like, "I want the red dragon. Go fetch it for me." And it's like, if you helped bring it in, like, you can work as a team, that's fine. And it's really weird because it's like, is it all a pass-fail? Like, how do you decide who helped to get the dragon? It's really weird.
What does capturing a dragon have to do with your performance?
Again, she's selling this to you as you need to prove who's the 10 most worthy acts to go. And so again, what is capturing a dragon? At least the obstacle course was like, we're testing your like
Agility
and athletics. But anyway, so they have to capture a dragon, and Aurora's like,
I'm
okay,
done with this.
we're gonna. She gets her little group of people, and they're going to get the
All
dragon.
right.
And
Bye.
find